Year 4015 after the death of Earth. They called their galaxy the Milky Way. Milky Way? Yeah, when they looked up at the stars at night, they saw a path of stars in a cluster, and to them it looked milky, hence the name. Which planet was it? It was the third planet in a solar system with a Type 12 star, Class 7, about 200 trillion years old. Did they know the age of their star? No, they thought it was only 5 billion years old. Ha ha ha! What made them think that? They thought it was a nuclear furnace, converting hydrogen to helium, and they thought it would burn out in 5 billion more years, so they miscalculated its age. So dumb. Were they the dominant species on the planet? No, there were a couple of superior species native to the planet. One was an underground lizard type. They had 5 colonies in the solar system at the time of the destruction, down from 7 colonies previously. They had direct underground access to the place where the human leader lived and worked. What is the planet called? The subspecies that died out called it Earth. There was another, more advanced species native to the planet, reptile lizards. The lizards had colonies in the solar system, and the other species lived in the core of the planet. Other extraterrestrials lived on the planet, but they were not native to it. How was the planet destroyed? The planet was not destroyed, but most of the surface life ceased to exist after the radiation poisoning. Only subterranean species survived the nuclear catastrophe. The extraterrestrials left before the passing of the dwarf star, which changed the position of the poles and wiped out all the nuclear power plants. They had hundreds of them. How many? They had more than 400 working at the time of the pole shift. This is what happens when a species plays around with nuclear materials when they didn't really understand what they were doing. What a pity. Did either of the dominant species intervene? They tried, but the subspecies that destroyed the planet was ruled by service-to-self types, and they would not listen to reason, and so the outsiders decided to just let the planet life perish. An advanced species can always clean up the mess and seed the planet with new life. What about the lizards? They are native to the planet, having evolved over the previous 65 million years, and they saw the demise and didn't prevent it, somewhat envious of the rapid development of the planet's subspecies. They cleaned up the mess? Yes, but all the surface life died. How is the planet doing now? Very well. It has been reseeded with new life, and living things are in harmony with the planet. Too bad for the inferior humans. Service to self is a bitch. Will they ever learn? It happens all the time. 1 species in 1,000 can survive. How do they do it? They arrange their societies with a service to others mentality, and it concurs with nature. Things only get better for everyone. Do you have any details about how this came about? I mean the destruction? The subspecies humans had something called money. Basically, they worked and received what they called a paycheck. They used their paycheck to buy things they needed. How weird! Who thought of this enslaving device? It was another species that invaded the planet. Didn't the Council of Civilizations intervene? No, the invaders brought with them writing, mathematics, science, law, and astronomy, so they were allowed to continue their experiment. The problem was that once the powerful minority had control of the resources, which transferred wealth to the top, they would not allow any free energy devices, and they had a patent office which denied patents to free energy inventors. Many brilliant people invented useful things, but the humans who were in control blocked the distribution of these advanced devices. How did they get energy for their devices? They had discovered electricity, and they couldn't make the connection between their star and electricity? No. Once the idea was planted that it was a nuclear furnace, the inhabitants were fed the lie for generations, even though many of the facts defied the assignment of this erroneous conclusion about their star. But the surface temperature should have told them that. Yes, it's quite obvious that this nuclear furnace concept is incorrect, but if the truth were known, it might lead to more inventions and devices that would threaten the powers that were in control. So you're saying that the people were kept in the dark, so the service to self types could transfer wealth up the food chain to the top of the pyramid. It appears so. We are still collecting the data of the last days. Was there one catastrophic event that ended the life on the surface of the planet? No, there was one, then another, and then a cluster of them when the planet had a close encounter with a passing dwarf star. At that time they had been building nuclear power plants for profit. The entire society was based on money, and so it gets pretty weird. People do things for money, not for the benefit of others, and it builds up to a point of tension, and then everything collapses. So, service to self leads to money, and the struggle for money makes everyone treacherous, and the planet becomes a belligerent group of people knocking each other over the head to get the money. Right. Then they develop nuclear power, they don't know what they're doing, and they poison the oceans and the fish. They didn't understand that the ocean waters circulate around the planet? Get this, their planet was 3/4 water. Unbelievable. The stupidity, the greed. We've seen it all before. Had they directed their energies in the service to others, they would have allowed free energy devices and avoided the nuclear catastrophe and developed into a society that respects life, cooperates, and collaborates with others. And the galactic community would have welcomed them with open arms. What about the others, the dominant species? Did they have a role in this? They had direct access to the White House. The White House? What's that? Oh, sorry. They had kings and leaders who were barbaric conquerors who exploited the people, shaved the coins made of silver and gold, spent lavishly the hard-earned wealth of the common people. Later, they became more civilized, following an age of enlightenment, and one country deposed their king by cutting off his head. What followed was chaos, with people killing people for ridiculous reasons. Another dictator followed, named Napoleon, and it took a long time to depose him, and then the society, called France, returned to normalcy. They had rulers, but they weren't kings. This idea spread around the world, and the idea of royalty faded in all the sensible countries. In the West, they set up a government on the basis of a constitution, giving people rights and choosing leaders based on merit, not brute strength. They were elected at first, but that didn't last long. In 137 years after many tries, a small group obtained control of the nation's currency, and they began to bribe representatives. The leaders were then appointed, not elected. Once the service to self types had established themselves into positions of power, they took over everything of value. Their kings lived in special places called palaces, but in the West, they didn't have kings. They called their leader a president. He lived in a white house at the center of all the corruption. They used to joke about the Capitol, calling the Washington, D.C. District of Corruption, or District of Criminals. Almost everyone knew the system was corrupt, but they didn't know how to make changes because everything was under the control of a handful of service-to-self types. And nobody noticed that the leaders were appointed? No, it was done with electronic voting booths and was largely hidden from the masses. Most of the people thought they were actually electing presidents. After a while, though, it was clear that their representatives were no longer representing the people. Everything fell apart from there. The currency crashed, and the dictators took over everything. Life was miserable after that. The death of the people was a sort of blessing, for it ended the reign of the tyrants. When did the inhabitants start to become suspicious that their elections were rigged and leaders were being appointed? Certainly some noticed the obvious changes. Correct. The masses had an awakening. They developed computers and then linked them all together. It was called the Internet. That's like connecting brains in series and would have changed the society in little time. Yes, it did, and the people became more aware of what was going on, and one thing led to another, as one fact leads to two more questions, and the entire thing unraveled. So the people kicked out the kings and the representatives, and each person in the society became a leader and represented themselves? Yes, but it was already too late. They had built hundreds of nuclear power plants, and when the poles shifted, tsunamis wiped out all the nuclear power plants. They melted down and contaminated the water, which circulated around the planet, killing everything. You mentioned two dominant species. Did the lizards try to intervene? Discussions with the leaders of the subspecies at the end were about 14 extraterrestrial species that were living on the planet, and this was a more serious concern to both the lizards and the subspecies of humans. Those extraterrestrials were working with the human subspecies for the most part, but one group of extraterrestrials was hostile toward the humans and influencing their leaders using mind control techniques, so the two dominant species could not convince the human subspecies to take action on the electrical power generation using nuclear devices, and the lizards really didn't care anyway. It was their planet, and the subspecies of humans considered it their own out of ignorance, even though there was evidence that they were aliens and had been genetically engineered by an outside species. Who were the engineers of the humans? They were the Elohim from Aldebaran, in the region of space these people called Taurus. Taurus? It means bull. It's a constellation. They called a cluster of stars bull? When the ancient people looked up into the sky at night, they saw animals from the position of the stars and the imagined shapes. It helped them recognize constellations. So the more advanced Elohim go to this planet Earth from Aldebaran, ignore the dominant species already present, take an existing ape species, and rapidly develop it into a creature that poisons the planet. Yes, and you can imagine how the Terrans felt about that. They were not happy, but they were wise and did not annihilate the subspecies. They would have drawn the wrath of the Council if they did. Yes, they had a good relationship with the Council of Galaxies, and they didn't want to have any blemish on their record. Do you think they really tried to avert disaster? I mean, they develop over 65 million years, then the Elohim come to town, take a monkey and turn him into a somewhat intelligent species, and the trouble begins. All correct, but we don't want to judge anyone. They did try, and we don't blame them for not interceding into the affairs of an inferior race. They knew that the inferior race would eliminate itself very soon, and there was no need to eliminate them. So when the nuclear power plants melted down, it was goodbye and good riddance. Something like that. How long has it been since the end of life on the surface and reboot? About 2,000 years. Are we going to visit the Terrans? Of course. They are our kind of people. Because they're reptiles? Of course. Isn't everyone?